My 2015 haunting story. Hosted by Live and Learn. I've been wanting to share this story here for some time. Finally have the time to do it. So, a little background info. I, 34F, my husband, 35M, and our two daughters, 9 and 10, moved into a house built in 1900 back in October of 2014. The following year, in 2015, I had quit my job to stay home with my youngest, then for and to be able to be available for school runs for my then 5-year-old who just started kindergarten. So fast forward about a month into the school year, October 2015. One day after I dropped my kindergartner off at school, I took my youngest for a walk through a very old cemetery around the corner from our house. The cemetery is close to new graves. Many of the tombstones date back to the late 700s into the 1800s. The autumn foliage was beautiful. My daughter had never been in a cemetery before and was on cloud 9. She is weird and morbid like me. She was running around inspecting the graves, asking a million questions, and as she sometimes does, she informed me about some of the history about specific graves and the people who were buried. She has a tendency to make up stories about things she sees that have happened to turn out to be facts later on. I'm not claiming she is psychic, but she definitely has my bloodline in her. I'll get into that a little later on. We went home and within a couple days, weird things started happening. It started with small things, like I would feel as if someone had brushed by me, walking by or something like that, but no one was there. Whenever I was in the basement doing laundry, I started feeling like someone was watching me. Then I started thinking I heard whispers or commotion coming from areas of the house no one was in. I was also going through a bit of a severe depression at the time, so at first I thought I was just going crazy. Then one evening, I was sitting on the couch with my husband watching TV, and in the corner of the room, we both saw and heard something dark, shadowy, fall from the ceiling and slam on the floor. I jumped, he jumped, we both looked at each other, and he got up to check to see what it was, and nothing was there. It was at that time that I confided in him about the brushes, whispers, and commotion. He then informs me that he has heard things too, that he would be upstairs in the shower and thought he heard me come home with the kids, front door open and talking, only to find no one was home when he came downstairs. He just didn't think anything of it, so never said anything. At this point I realized it wasn't in my head, and that our house was likely haunted. It is what it is. Then a few nights later, I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night, maybe around 3 a.m. I got up because I felt wide awake. So I left my room and went out to the hallway, when I suddenly noticed my youngest daughter on the first landing going down the stairs. I called out to her, "What are you doing, baby?" She looked up at me with the most frightened look I had ever seen on her face, and she said, "I heard you calling me downstairs." Chills ran through my entire body, and I told her, "Okay, well, I'm right here. Why don't you come sleep in the bed with me?" She ran back up the stairs and went to bed. The next morning after I dropped my oldest off at school, I called my mom. She's, well, I don't know how to put it exactly, but basically a modern day witch, and also familiar with hauntings and such. So she tells me what I need to do and to come over and get supplies. The whole thing basically consisted of putting crystals behind all the doors in the house, spreading Himalayan salt across doorways, going outside and also spreading the salt around each corner of the house and blessing it, and then finally saging the entire house. I'm very familiar with saging as I've done it before. Everything is going fine until the saging comes. I get a fire-safe ashtray, fill it up with dried sage, light it, and begin the process starting from the upstairs, working my way down to the basement. My youngest is with me during this process. I get through the entire house and down to the basement when suddenly, the ashtray explodes in my hand. It literally exploded. Freaked me TF out, and my daughter. I send her upstairs and I clean up the mess. Meanwhile, the entire time I feel like someone's watching. At that point, I immediately called my mom and told her what happened. She then decided she would come over and resage the house. We got to talking and trying to figure out what was going on, what caused this sudden haunting after a year of living there. We came to the conclusion that it was likely many factors. The veil is at its thinnest during the month of October, Samhain, which basically means the connection to our world and the supernatural grows stronger during this time. I've always been susceptible to the supernatural since childhood. That's another story, and my depression likely brought out anything that was laying dormant, and that my youngest daughter possibly brought something back with her from our cemetery trip just before all this started happening, or awakened something when she was there. After that, everything calmed down and basically went back to normal. On Halloween that year, just a few days after the sieging and whatnot, we were with a group trick-or-treating, and my friend told me to tell everyone about what was going on. The mass consensus was that we should burn the house to the ground. Though, we did not, and virtually nothing has happened since. My experiences as a crime scene cleaner, posted by Testicles E620. To start out, you need a little backstory to show how I got into this situation. When I got out of high school around 2003, finding a job was difficult, so I took whatever horrible jobs I could to get by. When I found a job cleaning fire and water damage full-time, I was excited to have steady income and start saving. But this quickly turned into a nightmare that I had to endure for almost 2 years. The company I worked for put me on my first job, which was a water damage claim where a basement flooded with sewage. So after a few days of work we finished and it was on to the next job. My boss then called me into his office the next morning and told me about a special crew that he was setting up and asked if I would be the crew leader supervising 3 other guys that were just hired. I found this strange, as I had only been working there a total of around 3 days, but figured my work ethic was already paying off and I would get a raise. I only made 10 an hour to start. Not only did I not get the raise, but I got no training in the new position other than a work van with cleaning material and the phone numbers for the 3 new guys that also were hired in to do fire/water damage cleanup. The boss told me what tools were best to use and what cleaning products to use to sanitize, along with where everything was located in the van, with hazmat suits and respirators, but he was vague about what kind of things I would clean up. He just said the situations were always different and I would get detailed instructions each job. He called my position CSC crew leader. The boss told me that I would never have to see the deceased, as the coroner would have the remains gone by the time my crew got there, and to use my logic to determine what needed to be removed from the homes and what could be cleaned. The first job I had in my new position, which the boss told me about when I got to the office, was cleaning up the remains of an elderly man or woman who died in their house and had been laying in a chair. When we arrived, the coroner had me come inside to show me a few things that were considered hazardous material and needed to be removed due to the risk of disease. I guess my boss knew a few people from the county coroner's office, and much of the work came from the recommendations. Not only was the deceased still in the house, but was fully visible to me, and the other guy and Jew could smell the rot through the mask, as the house had no AC and this was mid-June. The coroner was backed up and waiting on additional people to show up to load the body as it was falling apart, and I called the body it because I honestly couldn't tell if it was male or female and was trying not to look too long as it was disturbing. The other 3 guys I worked with handled it well, but 2 got sick from the smell and has to go outside to puke. We all waited outside after the coroner showed us the chair, the fluids that leaked into the carpet, in the basement where the fluids went through the subfloor and puddled on some boxes in the basement. The coroner's support arrived and took the deceased out, and me and the crew started working. After about 5 minutes, weird things started to happen, the first of which was when I began to disassemble the chair. I had removed the back of the chair and was putting it into the special hazmat bags that I was given, and the base started to rock when I was about 10 feet away, putting the bag with the back of the chair by the front door. Nobody else was in the same room as the other guys were in the basement dealing with moving boxes. I brushed it off and took apart the base of the chair as much as I could, and when I got it into the bag, I got a chill up my back and then began feeling sick. I just figured it was the shock of what I was cleaning hitting me and pushed on, even though the chill was strange as I was very hot in full hazmat in June. Next was removing the carpet and assessing the floor to see if it would be able to be cleaned or if I had to remove a section of the floor. So I called the boss to ask him, and he told me just to pour the special cleaner on the area to soak into the floorboards and it would be fine. So I got it out of the truck where he said it was and brought it inside. When I got inside, all three of the guys in the basement were scrambling to get out of the basement, tripping over each other, and all three ran outside. When I asked them what was up, all three said there was someone in the cluttered basement and they assumed it was a homeless person or junkie. Detroit has many issues with these kinds of things. I listened at one of the open windows to the basement. It's kind of the first thing we did when we started working. Open any window possible, prop the doors open, so maybe someone got inside then or possibly before we got there and was hiding. After listening a few minutes and hearing nothing, me and another of the workers went inside, armed with a mag light and a piece of metal fence post, and searched the basement. Nothing was down there but the footprints of the shoe covers we used. But when we started up the stairs, we heard a horrible hacking cough from somewhere in the basement. When we looked for it, there was nothing, but the corner of the basement had a bunch of dust stirred up like someone was moving things very recently. That weirded us both out. We called the guys back in and they got back to the boxes. But all of them kept feeling like they were being touched while throwing away material from the boxes that got fluids on them. I went back to my upstairs job but found that the cleaner I put next to the floorboards was gone. And I started getting frustrated as it was the only jug I had of this cleaner, and I clearly remember it being set next to the area before the guys ran up the stairs, and my attention was redirected. I began to take out trash, figuring I would find it eventually, or the basement guys took it for the floor, and I found it on its side, behind the bag that had the back of the chair. This is impossible. There were like 6 other bags in front of this one near the front door, and this was a gallon bottle of cleaner. Again, I got a chill, but this one was brought on by what sounded like a whisper that I could not make out the words to. Cleaned the floorboards and moved out trash. Job complete. That night, each member of my crew had a dream about an older man telling us that we are not welcome in his home, touching his belongings, and we need to leave. In my dream, I was alone in his house. The old man cried and told me I was destroying his things and he couldn't replace anything. He was trying to push me out of his house, but it was like I was ignoring him. Even when he would push me and scream at me, no reaction from me. He then threw my cleaner into the garbage pile I had made by the front door, exactly where I found it. 2 of the 3 guys in the crew told me their dreams about the old man pushing them as they went through boxes of ruined pictures and other old stuff that needed to be thrown out due to risk of disease from the fluids. They also said it was like they had no control and were on autopilot. They said they were so sad but couldn't do anything. The thing that got me about the dreams of the other 2 guys was they both said the man was getting so upset that he began violently coughing, and that the man kept grabbing their arms when they would touch boxes or throw things into the trash. Neither of the guys were in the house when me and the other guy heard the coughing from the basement. The guy that went into the basement with me said he had a dream, but all he remembered was waking up, sad, like he did something wrong, and had a horrible coughing fit. Which might just be a coincidence, but I connected it in my mind as relating to the other dreams. We all talked about it and came to the conclusion that we were all just having a reaction to a situation and it was nothing more than our brains coping with what we had to do. I'm very into psychology, so I rationalized it the best I could and we hoped for better assignments the next day. Next few jobs were not so bad. Cleaning up blood at a home invasion, no casualty, but huge mess. Then there was a few other bloody crime scenes with casualties, but nothing notable happened. About 2 weeks into the job, we began to learn the tricks of the trade and were split into 2 different groups that I was responsible to manage as crew leader, so I would have to go to different sites if the other 2 guys had an issue or didn't know what to do. I thought I was getting used to the job as well as the other guys as we had no other experiences like the first job, but I was wrong. The next job that there was activity was a suicide of a man that was middle-aged. The coroner had already removed the body, but it was a mess. The guy had shot himself with what I think was a large caliber handgun or shotgun, as the spray was everywhere in the basement in like a second living room. There were skull fragments lodged in drywall, brain matter all over, and again it was not found for a bit, so the smell was horrible. First step in cleaning this was using our backpack vacuum cleaner to suck up all the biomaterial. The coroner told us when we went in that he and his partner were extremely uneasy in the house, and it felt strange, and we immediately started getting a claustrophobic suffocating feeling when we went into the basement as well. To make matters worse, the family of the man had came over and were crying upstairs, but the vacuum noise helped to cancel out that. While I was cleaning, the power to the lights went out and it was completely pitch black. This was strange because my vacuum was still powered. My crewmate started screaming at this point, so I turned off my vacuum and climbed off my ladder. I thought maybe he touched the wire to the lights, but when my vacuum unit was turned off, he was still screaming and I could hear things being knocked over. I started fumbling around for my flashlight on my tool belt and yelled for my friend asking what was going on, but all I got back was panic screaming. Then I saw in the pitch black something darker that was moving in my direction, and I will admit, I freaked out. I slipped trying to back up, still looking in my belt for the flashlight and found it when my back hit the basement wall. I turned on the light aimed at the blackest shape I have ever seen, and when the light turned on, I saw the shape of a man wearing a flannel shirt, beard, and an expression like he was about to attack me. Then, it was just gone. My crewmate was behind where the entity was, sitting on the floor rocking with his hands on his head. When I approached, he picked up his flashlight off the ground and turned it on, then ran up the stairs and outside and threw up. I followed behind him, asking if he was okay and why he was screaming. I thought I just imagined the entity and the man because his screaming scared me. But he told me that he was scrubbing the wall and felt something pulling on something in his tool belt, and he thought it was me. But when he turned around, the lights went out, and he was engulfed by what he said was like a dark smoke, and he immediately could not breathe and was struggling to move. He managed to pull his flashlight out, but it was knocked out of his hand, like his wrist was grabbed with force, and he managed to scream. When he screamed, trinkets started falling off an entertainment center that was about 3 feet to his side, and the black smoke moved back, but he was close to passing out from exertion. He also said he lost hearing and didn't know that any noise came out when he started screaming, and that the stuff falling off the shelves was landing on him, and that's why he was covering his head. He said it felt like a weight was lifted off him when the dark smoke backed up, but he felt sick right away, and the light from my flashlight made the sick feeling increase. We took an early lunch where he just sat there, pale as ever, and didn't say much other than he said he breathed in that smoke and didn't feel right. I got him some Gatorade and his color started to come back. I never told him I saw a man when I turned on my light because we still needed to finish, and I didn't want to put that in his head since he never mentioned seeing it. When we went back, the lights in the basement were on again. Half the things that fell from the shelves were back in the entertainment center, and the TV was in baseball. There was also a different smell in the room, similar to burnt hair. My worker stayed a half hour, got sick again, and went home for the day, leaving me alone to finish, which I didn't want to do, but had to, as the other guys had their own job. After cleaning up everything with my vacuum, I began scrubbing the old blood, which is hard after it congeals, mixed in brain matter, and it is like glue, even with cleaner. While I was finishing up, I kept seeing the shape of a person always in the side of my vision. Each time I would smell that strange burnt hair scent, and a few times, I also felt like a force was pulling at items on my belt, not sure what item, as there were several things in my belt. When I finished the job, I went to use the bathroom upstairs, and in the hallway along the way, I heard like muffled crying or moaning. I froze up and stayed still thinking maybe a family member had came back, and when I panned around, there was nothing. But I saw a picture on the wall of a man with a beard wearing a flannel. Several other pictures in the hallway of other scenarios the same man, different flannels with deer or fish or family. I had not seen a picture of that man, as I had not been anywhere else in the house with a bathroom. Nor did I use the bathroom downstairs, because pulling off the hazmat stuff is a pain. As I was securing the house, closing all windows, locking doors, and shutting down every light but the front porch light, I saw the front curtain move, and again saw the darker than black form in the front window. The last experience I will share in this thread happened mid-July in a very bad area in Detroit. There had been an incident where a guy supposedly tried to abduct a child, was stopped by people in the neighborhood who beat the man very bad, and he escaped to his house, where the neighborhood people quickly called police and civilians surrounded the man's house to prevent escape. The police response time in this area is horrible, and the people were throwing rocks through the man's window and damaged his car. The man was hurt bad by the mob and was hurt by a rock or glass and died in the home. This is assumption by DPD. From what the police officer told me, it was a misunderstanding, and the man picked up a girl that was injured riding her bike, and some kids that knew her told their parents that the man was kidnapping her, and people overreacted and the man was brutally beaten. The cleanup was pretty simple to do. We secured windows, cleaned up blood and bodily fluid, but as soon as I entered the house, I just felt wave after wave of fear and sadness, like I have never felt this before, and it hit in waves that made my legs weak. My working buddy who was there showed up late and didn't get the story from the cop like I did, but experienced the same feelings I had. The whole time we were there, we saw a form darting around corners, like it was watching us, then hiding. It was similar to like a small bit of fog or mist. We also heard very slight cries for help coming from several areas in the house, and also what sounded like "please stop" and "long no." A few times the crowd came back and yelled at the house also, and when this was going on, the activity in the house increased, and we could hear running footsteps go up the stairs. A door slammed, and it sounded like the front door would open and close, but we never saw any of the doors move. The path of the footsteps sounded like from the front door, through living room, to the bathroom, to stairs to the upstairs bungalow room. The part that really got me was I could feel the floor impacts that felt like vibrations of someone running past me when I was cleaning the areas. And each time I would be hit by one of those waves of fear and sadness. When we left the house, there were a few people on porches hanging out like as usual during summer, and the people were still hostile and yelling random things, but directed at us as we loaded the van and took off hazmat suits. We ignored this, but before we had loaded all the material from the house into the van and locked the house, the front door slammed hard enough to sound like a gunshot, which scared me and my crew member, along with the people on the front porch, to the point where they went inside. The front door deadbolt was somehow locked, and we could not get it open. I think it was a different key than the knob, so we ended up leaving several boards in the house that were left over from boarding a few of the windows. The feeling of relief when I left the house was like night and day. Inside I was anxious, scared, paranoid, and just really down, which could be due to knowing the story, but when I got outside, it was like flipping a light switch. I immediately felt better, and me and the other guy in my crew were joking and laughing about dumb stuff and normal 19 and 20-year-old shenanigans. I have many of these stories written down in detail in a journal I started after the first 3 months of working at this job. I talked to the guys on the cruise and got other strange stories from them too. I know that some of this could very well be formed by my subconscious mind to cope with traumatic situations, but some of it has no explanation. And when I hear other members of my crew tell me their stories, and they haven't been influenced by mine, that is a horse of a different color. When I have time, I will pull out the journal and give more of my experiences. The job got way worse, but I started the journal after 3 months in. Several experiences with what I think was paranormal, many situations that stressed my mental state to the point where my mask of sanity started to slip. In the end, I worked at this place for almost 2 years, and of all my crew, all died. 2 from suicides, 1 from drug overdose that could have been intentional, but we will never know. I just know that when these three guys, my age, around 19 and 20, started this job, all were normal, well-adjusted guys with no cares in the world other than girls, parties, and working. I watched each one of them slowly drain their joys and passion for life. And I know this sounds bad, but each one that died was considerate enough to die in a clean way, most likely so another person wouldn't have to see the horrible thing that we all saw so often.
Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe for more videos.